Oh, hi everyone. My name is Amelia Regan, and I'm going to present a very recent study that I did with Professor Jean-Daniel Saphores on the impacts of COVID-19 on truck driver availability. And he and I are professors at the Institute of Transportation Studies at the University of California, Irvine. So the trucking industry has long been the backbone of the nation's economy. Its 3.5 million truck drivers were delivering over 70% of all freight tonnage, generating close to $800 billion in gross revenue annually, up to 2019. And during recent and past crises, the trucking industry has played a leading relief role in delivering food, water, first aid, and temporary shelter where it was most needed. This latest crisis is no exception. However, there's been a shortage of truck drivers for a number of years in the U.S., starting well before the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, it's natural to ask if this crisis will amplify or dampen the shortage, and also how it might affect supply chains. What if 5, 10, or even 20% of long-haul truck drivers became ill? Would it cripple the industry? After reading recent newspaper articles, looking at past crises, and talking to a few experts, here's what we found. The American Trucking Association estimated that there was a shortage of more than 60,000 over-the-road truck drivers at the end of 2018. That's out of approximately 1.8 million heavy-duty tractor-trailer drivers in the U.S. It's about 3.5% of the total. The trucking industry has also long suffered from a severe driver retention issue, especially for long-haul trucking. Factors behind these problems include regulations, relatively low pay, and a lack of interest from young people in this profession, which sometimes requires spending a lot of time away from home, even many weeks at a time. Another problem is income variability, especially for these long-distance drivers who are paid by the mile. As the U.S. was operating nearly at full employment in 2018 and 19, trucking companies finally responded to the shortage by offering significant hiring bonuses and also higher pay. But the recession caused by COVID-19 has been sudden and deep. After President Trump declared a national emergency on March 13, 2020, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration provided hours of service relief to truck drivers who are transporting essential supplies, equipment, and people. This clearly helped. In the first few weeks following this emergency declaration, some Americans started panic buying, so grocery stores had to quickly restock their shelves with toilet paper, paper towels, hand sanitizer, as well as canned and dry foods. This initially created more work for truckers. However, the closure of many businesses that followed severely depressed the demand for trucking service, and even in the midst of this crisis, depressed driver pay. Many drivers who left long-haul trucking for local distribution or gig economy jobs found themselves suddenly unemployed, and that erased the chronic shortage of truck drivers. As the U.S. economy is starting to reopen, truck rates per mile are slightly increasing, along with the demand for trucking services. Forecasts are especially positive for Southern and Central California, as shown on this map below. So the red is the especially high demand areas. As of the end of May 2020, forecasting models show continued positive growth for trucking services, although not large enough to cause a shortage of drivers. So this next figure shows both the downturn and then the expected uptick in the future. So just as in the housing market crisis and the recession that ensued, the economic crisis has at least temporarily erased the truck driver shortage. So even if there were a modest sudden drop in the availability of drivers due to illness, there will probably not be a shortage of truck drivers. Of course, this is not an ordinary economic crisis, so it's very difficult to predict exactly what will happen. The widespread civil unrest triggered by the May 25, 2020 death of George Floyd in police custody in Minneapolis on the economy adds further complications to the already brewing recession. How long this unrest will last and how far it will spread is unknown. It's also unknown is the impact that these large gatherings, and of course other political rallies, will have on the spread of COVID-19, which will have a further impact on the economy. So we believe that it's very important for the state to continue treating trucking as an essential industry. And the state needs to ensure that some rest areas will remain open, clean, and safe along major trucking routes. This has been an issue in some other states. Pennsylvania is one example. The state should also work with truck stops to make sure that truckers have access to clean and safe bathrooms where they can take showers and areas where they can have warm meals. And the state should work with trucking companies and independent truck operators to make sure they have access to personal protective equipment as needed. And the state should work with the industry to educate truckers about best practices for dealing with COVID-19 and consider making available a smartphone app for contact tracing. And finally, it should consider putting in place a testing program for the trucking industry and work with the industry to provide truckers based in California and their families with health insurance that covers the cost of treatment for COVID-19. So in conclusion, in the short term, we do not expect this pandemic to lead to a shortage of truck drivers in California for any segments of the industry. However, the state should work with the industry to make sure that truck drivers have necessary personal protective equipment, as well as information about safe rest stops and places where they can clean up and eat. It should also consider testing and making sure truckers and their families have access to adequate health coverage. Over the long run, the state should consider addressing some of the structural problems in trucking. We'd like to thank you very much for your time and attention, and we're providing our contact information here.